Hey, it is, what is it, September
19th, I think.
19th. 2024, we've had a really, really busy last couple of weeks. That's why I didn't even know what day it is and what the date is. We just wrapped up our AEP kickoff here in the office.
That's funny. I woke up this morning and I literally could not figure out what day of the week it was. It took me forever.
It's been a blur the last actually couple of weeks, but yeah, this week in particular, we had some folks, a lot of our carrier partners that had flown in, a lot of them from the national teams coming to our kickoff event. We had some of our staff members come in from out of state. We had some brokers and even some agency partners who traveled to come in. So we were prepping everything for our event, being hosts for our guests, which we really like to do. Again, we think that this is a very important element of our business. It's a relationship business. So anytime people come into town, we roll out the red carpet, like to spend time with them, go to dinner, do transportation, do all that kind of stuff. So we've had our hands full this last week. And so anyways, now we're kind of getting back to business as usual, but thought we probably should recap the event and kind of for people who didn't attend or didn't listen, kind of give them an idea. And I'm sure some of you who tried to listen to the live stream have a lot of thoughts on it too.
Yeah, first I'll address that.
Yeah, go ahead,
address
MC.
that. So,
Mike emceed the event, so he can kind of talk about it.
Well, we have down in our building, we have a great auditorium that's set up for town halls that we've used, and we tested everything, and we had this great idea that we wanted to just broadcast it live via YouTube for all of you out here that subscribe, and if you gleaned any bit of information, great. But with the technical capabilities, with some of the mixers of the sound, it was weird because the sound was working perfectly for people that were listening on mobile devices, but for some reason, anybody that was listening on a PC, it was like staticky and choppy, which made no sense. So we started messing with the sound and trying to change sound settings. And through the YouTube broadcast platform, it's pretty limited. There wasn't a lot of like audio changes and things that we could do.
I would say it's more designed for a mobile device through YouTube.
Yeah, and more of a simplified broadcast there, and we hadn't really planned on doing it. We could have just easily done it more via like a Zoom webinar for our internal distribution, but we wanted to open it up publicly. And anyway, no good deed goes unpunished, right? And then we also tried to accommodate some carrier partners, and the carriers are a mixed bag of challenges themselves because they all have different cybersecurity protocols and different settings on their.
Oh yeah. So just to give people an idea and talk about that, we have some carriers who are like, hey, I can't email you my presentation because of the file size, and my email only allows for 25 megs, and then I can't send a file. Oh, I can't distribute this outside of our VPN. Nope, I can't give you a thumb drive for the presentation because of our security. Nope, I have to only do encrypted files. And so when you're trying to host an event, there's a lot of those dynamics.
Yeah, so we tried to make some accommodations for somebody to remote in, and then we had some sound challenges because it would play basically YouTube's live broadcast audio mix channel would only allow it to flow through one direction and wouldn't. So it was either people could hear it online or we couldn't hear it in our auditorium locally. So we decided to kind of kill it, and so our bad. We know. People teased us and acted
Lessons learned.
Like we didn't know what we were doing, but we do. It just ended up.
Well, and we tried to kind of make some accommodations for some partners that we had been very communicative with in the future, or in advance. And we just learned hey, we got to stick to our guns on some of this and say, hey, it's got to be this way, because us trying to accommodate things made it very challenging.
Well, and then you have one carrier in particular acts like their files are all Mission Impossible, like Ethan Hunt when he gets his mission, and it's going to self-destruct 10 seconds after you hear it, and it's the most precious, precarious, confidential information known to man, and but hey, when you're a massive company, you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
I get it. We don't understand the corporate life. Some of the people listening are like, oh my gosh, you have no idea. Probably I have to have a laptop that's like this thick and is crappy and is like a ThinkPad from 10 years ago, and I have to log into my Risco or like my multi-factor authentication, and some of those things that big corporate has to go to for data security is
Well, it's funny because hilariously, many of those same companies are the ones that always have these data breaches and tech hack things
like,
too.
I know, right?
But
even I don't even
we're going to talk about it later. Yeah.
I didn't think we were going to mention it too. Like we were talking about content before the podcast, and there was a big Move It hack. Did you? I don't know if you read about that one or not, but
no, I got something in the mail saying my data was exposed through the Change Health.
So Move It is like a big, facilitator, like an API, like a tech company who transfers data. And there was actually a huge hack that affected about 1 million. They're estimating about 1 million Medicare beneficiaries because one of the claims processors for Medicare was using their IT systems, their interfaces. And they had a vulnerability, and they think about 1 million people on Medicare had their information compromised recently.
I just assume that all my personal health information is easily findable on the internet, including all my medical history if anybody wants to.
Your browsing history, your interests,
whatever,
everything.
I assume I have no privacy. So.
I operate the same. That's why I tell everybody, I was like, anybody can look at my phone. I've got nothing to hide. Everybody already knows what I'm into. I have no privacy.
Yep. So the event was great. There was some fun takeaways. I think we're gonna, we'll talk about this in a moment, but we're gonna change some things up for next year. But what were some of the takeaways that you had? I mean, overall, we talked about it last week, but it seems like as carriers are now fully unveiling a lot of their benefits, that a lot of the plans that stuck around, the benefits were not looking near as ugly as they were at the beginning of the year, and that's mostly a function of panic and CMS kind of adding some more, increasing rebates and, finding some more funding for these plans, and the plans were able to build those back in and have less of an impact on the plans that are sticking around. Yeah,
I talked about that. That was one of my talking points when I did my wrap up, is like no more bailouts, right? Is I think that we're in a year where we kind of saw that this particular calendar year for 2025 benefits, but I don't think we're going to be in an environment next year where we're going to continue to have just like those, oh my gosh, hold on, what did we do? Let's hurry and scramble and find some funding to fix it. I mean, I just don't know that we're going to be able to do that next year. So
yeah, and any time that there's no matter which color is in office, whenever there's a year with a big event, wink, wink, then there's always, whoever's in charge is always going to do whatever they can to cause as less impact as they can to influence things. If you read between the lines, we just had interest rates 6 weeks before they came down.
Hey, someone can find my archived comments on LinkedIn. I said that they would have to drop it by at least 0.5 point to have it make any sort of an impact, and it was 0.5 point.
Magic. It couldn't happen 6 months ago, but it's happened 6 weeks out.
I almost feel like, wow, I'm smart. I predicted that one.
Yeah. So anyway, we could do a whole podcast on that, but we're not going. We were talking about our overlords and getting permission.
We're talking about the kickoff and the themes from our kickoff. So we talked about a lot. My takeaways were it was, very well attended. I think we had great attendance in person, and we had great attendance online. So I was happy with our turnout. I always am really, really appreciative of all of our carrier partners who show up, who spend their time, who spend their money, who give us their attention and try to help, our agent distribution. So thank you to all the carrier partners who participated. But my other observation was just how, again, we continue to talk about all the changes happening and how ill-prepared and unaware a lot of agents still are. That was a big takeaway for me. And I'm trying to continue to think about ways that I can kind of hit people over the head and make them pay attention and force them to pay attention. But that was one of my takeaways. And then I would say another big common theme that obviously we were pushing was planning ahead on either degradation of benefits or increasing med sup premiums and having gaps to fill, and agents need to be a little bit more sophisticated in their needs analysis and finding ancillary and supplemental products to continue to enhance in their portfolio.
Yeah, a couple things with our agents. It is fun now that we've been in this we've had some of these relationships for 15 years and done business with some of these agents. They are amused and they think it's fun to see our growth. I always like to joke about Dan's office in the sandwich shop. Literally had a you could walk downstairs and eat sandwiches, and it smelled like back when I could smell.
Oh God, that
like,
sandwich shop. I'll tell you what. It started off as a cold deli sandwich shop below. And then when they added a kitchen where they could cook hot meats, oh God, it changed the game. And I was under a lease already. I got screwed.
Well, hey, at least the sandwiches were good. It was a good sandwich shop.
Maybe one day I'll make a montage because people don't understand maybe the hustle. Some of our brokers do, to your point, that I've known for 15 years. But to see the progressions from my little tiny basement State Farm office in a basement to the sandwich shop office to the building that I bought, that I sold, and then kind of the
upholstery bit,
next
to the upholstery shop,
the progression of our business brick and mortars over the years. It'd be probably a funny timeline.
Yeah, so that's been really fun. But like you'd mentioned, some of the agents, and this is not just, of course, our agents, but all agents are just not prepared for all the changes this year, right? And I think some of them, they're just used to these cadences in the industry where they kind of get certified at the year, they start paying attention again in the fall, and then this year they're kind of like, oh wow, sounds like there's a lot of changes this year, and you're going, yes, my friend, welcome to
welcome to the
party.
Industry.
Yeah, welcome to the party. But part of one of the things that we talked about with some of the carriers and where they were cutting benefits pretty much universally across the board is the dental.
Yep.
Devoted's cut their dental pretty substantially across the board. Same thing with United. And both of them, United had a statistic that said how many beneficiaries actually access their dental benefit at all.
Utilization.
I think, do you remember what it was, Jeff? I think it was like 37% or something like that, like mid 30s. So about a third of the people actually utilize those benefits at all. And of course, everybody cares about dental. Everybody wants to know that it's available. And I think Devoted kind of had the same read on it. It's a sexy benefit to say I've got X amount of dental, but it's underutilized and you can make those cuts. But to the consumer, that's a very obvious and blatant area where it seems like, oh wow, that degraded thousands of dollars, Well,
I think we started to see dental popping on. There's been this cycle of added benefits to like Medicare Advantage plans. And if you go back to like 2014, 2015, there wasn't dental on plans. That was actually somebody who was always asking. And yeah, some broker's going to be like, oh no, I'm in Chicago Metro. I'm in Southern California. No, we had dental. Yeah, there were a couple of those higher reimbursement states that had those products, but broadly throughout the country, the dental was not on Medicare Advantage plans. When they started popping in there a lot more prominently, like 2018, 2019, 2020, consumers have gotten used to dental and now they really, really like it. And so for them to have that familiarity and have that benefit and now to have that reeled backwards definitely is now impactful because they're expectant.
Yeah, for the most part, it used to just cover 2 preventive visits and like, is that get you a fluoride treatment or not?
No, sometimes and a toothbrush. Dental would be on there. And I remember back in the day, dental would be on plans and it would say, oh yeah, there's dental services only for Medicare covered. And so it was like, what's Medicare covered? I'm like, if you get into a car accident or something and actually have to
and all your teeth get smashed out
and literally have to have reconstructive or that's Medicare covered dental. And it's 80-20. And outside of that, nothing.
I'm always amused that when Medicare was enacted in the 60s, apparently people just didn't care about your vision, your teeth, your hearing. Those things weren't healthcare. Those things weren't part of the equation. It was like those were luxuries of being able to take care of your teeth and your vision and your hearing that they just couldn't care about back then.
Yeah, but the reason we're talking about those, I would say though, and we go to a lot of these national FMO kind of debriefs like after a sales season or prepping for it, hey, feedback, because I really will say, like, I'm still in the trenches. Like, I have a really good pulse on consumers with agents. I'm engaged every day. And I still say that, outside of core medical benefits and network and prescriptions, the things that consumers still care about the most, especially nowadays, are dental. They care about it. Whether they use it or not, they care about having it on a plan. And they care about grocery cards now, especially because of the environment of, you know, where things are at with inflation and cost of living for consumers. They care about those grocery cards. And especially when you start to think about like your whole health, and, you know, there's a movement right now, like food is health. And you think about like good in, good out, and having access to healthy nutrition. Like those are the things that people care about. And then from there, I would say it goes down to like vision, then hearing, and then everything else turns into like, okay, then it's all over the board. Like some people care about their Papa Pals. Some people care about their PERS unit, their Apple Watch that they get. Some people care about their pest control. My favorite that I always joke about still is we saw the emergence of Robo Kitty and Robo Puppy for the people who are lonely. And I'm like, oh my God. And I think that's
just take me out back if I ever care about that. I'm just gonna say
that's
it.
part
I'm
of
gonna
the
get you one for Christmas.
Well, and it got so ridiculous with like the SSBCIs.
Teddy Ruxpin is what I always call it.
We joked
You
about
guys
that.
are for 8 kids of the 80s. Remember Teddy Ruxpin?
And I remember being at that FMO conference with there was 2 carriers specifically that I know that had the kitty and the puppy, you know, social determinants of health and the loneliness, little companion puppies and kitties. And we were joking about it, and I was like, oh, can I get one every year? Can I collect the puppy one year and then use my benefit for a kitty the next year? And they're like, yes, you can.
I'm like, geez, just give him an Xbox and let him get some Xbox Live friends or something. You know?
And so I thought to myself, like, this is, again, if you're a regulator sitting back, you're like, there's obviously too much money kicking around if you can afford to give people an electronic kitty.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that's kind of where, you know, indicative of how we've gotten to where we are. But anyways, just going on to those extra benefits and kind of how things had evolved for more funding and adding them, and SSBCI and more and more and more and more, and now to an era of, you know, reeling some of that back.
Well, when you were talking about the food is health, right? The food is medicine movement that we'll talk about a little bit more. One of the carriers, when they were rolling out the grocery cards, like, oh, it doesn't work on, it's supposed to be for healthy groceries, but it basically works for everything except for cigarettes and alcohol. Yeah. And he's like, but, you know, try to like tell your people to buy healthy food. And I'm
Produce,
like,
yep.
So you can buy Gushers and, you know, and
Lunchables, like are famously unhealthy, you know, thing, Lunchables. And it's like the EBT cards too. You know, I remember the first time, years ago seeing someone use it, they were trying to buy some medicine and 3 big bags of M&Ms. And they were like, no, you can't use it for the medicine, just the M&Ms. And I'm sitting there going, man, no wonder we are in the healthcare system that we're in. And now some of these spendable cards, they're usable for everything that's not just healthy groceries, but hopefully we're coaching our beneficiaries to go use those grocery cards to buy healthy food
get some
choices.
Greek yogurt, get some milk, get some stuff. Like don't get Gushers and snack packs.
Yep, yeah, you know? get vegetables. I know it's easy, but like let's not get microwave, you know, dinners and treats and things like that. Let's try to get some healthy.
Don't take away their Jimmy Dean's breakfast sandwiches. Come on, Mike.
Yeah, I think some of them are going to be, you know, the healthy grocery deliveries is what's going to, you know, kind of happen, is they're going to be delivering healthy meals. And it's like, you don't have a choice. You can either eat this or not.
I think you're seeing that movement too.
Yeah.
I think you are seeing, and we're noticing it in benefits and vendors popping up, kind of like, I really think we saw more of an emergence during the COVID years of people being isolated, where you saw the Papa Pals kind of popping really and becoming popular to kind of address what was happening in that moment, right? And I don't know, someone can be mad at me or whatever, but I would imagine that it's not as popular right now as it was 2 or 3 years ago, right? But
well, that's also the same health era where we locked everybody in their homes and gave them cash to DoorDash McDonald's to their house.
Yes, exactly.
And that maybe wasn't
the smartest,
you know,
the wisest decision.
The all-in picture of health then.
Correct. And now you're seeing with the grocery people, to our point, we're talking about buying, I joke about snack packs from Billy Madison, you know, where's my snack packs? Where's my snack packs? You know, but
trying to trade them.
You know, just buying all this unhealthy food.
Ooh, I'll give you a snack pack.
Shows how old we are.
Weird.
You know?
Yeah.
And I watched that the other day and it wasn't as funny from back when I was younger.
The goofy humor.
Yeah. But, just going back to now, we're seeing them trying to be more responsible with how they're trying to get a result. Like the intention is to get people healthy food to improve their health care. The result was that people were still going to be like, I'm damned and determined to get diabetes and heart disease. I'm going to buy this unhealthy food. So now you're seeing, them trying to interfere, so to speak, or make decisions for them to force healthy food.
Well, we're kind of broaching into what we were going to talk about the last half of the episode, which is just kind of like the overall outside of the regulatory and the funding challenges to the health industry is we have a broader healthcare crisis and health crisis in the United States. And so things are looking fairly grim with the overall picture of the way our plans and funding are. And we basically just need to kind of hit the reset button on a lot of the things that we're funding in the industry. And we do have a lot of challenges that are just baked into the American consumer, our way of life, personal choice and responsibility, the lack of doctors and the lack of people entering into the healthcare system. So I don't know if we want to go deep into it yet or cover some other things, but we could talk about that for a whole.
We have enough actually today to do 4 episodes, but also, did I hear right? Some plans got rid of silver sneakers or fitness benefits.
Yeah, and a couple of the carriers, it wasn't across the board. It's kind of like you got to be really diligent about checking the summary of benefits because they didn't tout that very well. But
it was hidden, layered there. That some of them, I'm like, I don't know. That's fitness and a gym membership and things. That's absolutely like, even though your utilization might be low, the people who actually utilize it, I'm sure, has a very, very direct impact. So that was interesting that I saw. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that we can get into this episode and talk about. Mike and I were having a conversation off camera about, and his daughter's in nursing school. I don't know if my niece is going to nursing school. She's going to be part of the solution, hopefully, in bringing more healthcare workers. But just how kind of broken it is looking at right now, seeing not enough doctors, not enough physicians, specialists, care is getting more and more difficult for people to access. And it's going to get a lot worse before it's going to get better because you can't just snap your fingers and hit like the supply and demand. Mm-hmm. And so as we're looking at more people aging in and as they age, an aging population needing more healthcare services, and now you also have the new regulations that were put in place into care facilities and increasing the staffing requirements. Well, where do those people come from? Right. So there's a lot of that going on at the moment.
It's a tough road, because like you said, I'm going through that right now, and it's not cheap to become a nurse, especially, the way that my daughter's doing it. She's doing a accelerated nursing course, and I think we're going to be into it over 60,000.
Don't talk about it too much, because I know you could go a whole rant episode about that.
I could. Maybe I'll torch this company too, but let's just say the system is not
ideal,
very friendly or ideal. It's like, $60,000 over 20 months, and I'm trying to. How
many?
How do I get me some of this government money?
How many subsidies did you qualify for?
Yeah, well, 0. The bare minimum type of thing where they're like, they had me go through the applications, and I'm like, why didn't you just ask me how much money I make, and I could have just saved us all this pain and suffering, and you could have just said,
let me just tell you this, my friend, my brother, you did not meet the criteria for any of the funding out there for your situation.
I know. I needed to be better at my taxes or something like that. But yeah, it's been a tough road, right? Financially had that burden, and then it's very difficult, and they don't make it easy on these people. Of course, you want the best and the brightest in there, but we were talking about her particular program in schooling, and they have all these kids start, and then they don't pass. They don't make it through to the end because, number one, it's difficult. Obviously, you want people in healthcare that are, especially doctors, that are the best and the brightest, but, nursing and everybody in there. But there's just not a lot of there's incentives.
The barrier to entry is hard. Mm-hmm. It's cost prohibitive. And again, now in the marketplace, there's not as many financial rewards out there as there are in other industries. So a lot of the best and the brightest chase other things. So I think I could go down a whole episode. Maybe I'm going to shout out San Melman. That's maybe one of the episodes we talk about when we bring in a few thinkers in the industry and start talking about, well, how would you fix it and what would you do to fix healthcare? I think there's a lot that could be done, but I don't know that it's being implemented properly at the moment. So I think until there is some real significant discussion about changing the industry, it's going to continue to be a challenge. Like that, we're not going to continue to attract the best and the brightest. We're going to have shortages. Well, your mom's a nurse too, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, and my sister. She graduated from the same place Mike started.
Our mother's a nurse. She's a retired RN.
My father-in-law is an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. Look at us in this room. We're part of solving problems here. We're familiarly.
Who knew we were so much in the healthcare industry?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot out there though with it that's just changed over the last 10 to 20 years, and we just don't have let's just say the output of labor to match the needs and the growing needs of healthcare. From people to facilities to infrastructure.
One of the things we say all the time is, show me your comp plan, I'll show you your behavior, right? Well, people have to be properly incentivized to do certain things, and we're never going to fix the healthcare crisis in our country until we reward and incentivize personal behaviors, right? Because there's just I could go on a whole rant and tangent about the elimination of personal responsibility and accountability for oneself in modern day America. But until we have changed the incentives where there is some sort of benefit structured around those who are proactive to take care of their health, those who want to make healthy choices and cause less overall impact and burden on the system, we're never going to get long-term proper change, because the way our system's increasingly evolving is it goes the opposite direction, where there's more resources, more time, effort, and money ultimately dedicated and allocated to those who are big dollar into the system, so to say, into the health. And again,
I have a topic that we can't even do it in this episode because we won't get through it, but there's, you know what I'm talking about. There's a grenade I want to throw in there and be like, there's one key patient coming up that's going to be a gold mine for people that they're going to, anyways.
Well, that gets into the whole, I don't have my tinfoil hat on today.
I know.
But and we could talk about,
that's another episode.
You're not profitable and you can't make money if you're a healthy, sovereign individual. You've got to be unhealthy,
it's true,
and need to have a lot of care. Therefore, you are then valuable to the Medicare industrial complex. But hey, we don't want to make too many enemies on this podcast.
No.
And if changing the healthcare system anywhere in the world was easy and doable, people would be very, very popular and very, very wealthy.
That's true. All right. What else before we keep moving it along, has anybody heard, I was talking about it earlier today, just how bothered I was. This whole year has been a barrage of getting attacked on every side, from regulation to changes to, the hack. We've talked about it and did a prior episode. I wanted to circle back on two things. The Change Health hack that happened, when did that even happen? February?
It was March 12th,
yeah, it was,
or early March.
Man, it's been 6 months since that hack. 6 freaking months. And the entire industry was pretty much debilitated, from pharmacy claims to verifications. We were talking about the impact, and of course for us, industry-wide, we were impacted to the tune of millions. Yes, I said that right. Agent Boost, we were impacted by millions of dollars from that. And they're like, well, how did that financially impact you? Well, because we have large agent distribution and broker distribution who's selling products, specialized products, and you don't know whether somebody is regular income, what eligibility level do they have on the sliding scale? Do they qualify for a partial dual or a full dual plan? So the agent is like, oh, well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, this person said this, I'm guessing you qualify for this plan. And it's not the fault of the broker, because they no longer had a way to validate the eligibility. So they're putting in incorrect applications, and then they can't resolve what we'd call in the industry an RFI, a request for information, to get correct information on their income levels. So then they might be putting somebody on a full dual plan instead of a partial dual plan, and it's getting rejected, and then you can't ever resubmit the application correctly. And then we're also, as a company, having to spend more resources to hire staff to check on those, an uptick in RFIs because of it too. So it has cost us millions of dollars.
It costs us about 20% of our enrollments.
Yes.
And that's easily quantifiable for us, just because it increased the amount of policies that never effectuated by many multiples.
Yep. And so that's just our organization. So when you think about the whole industry ecosystem, different e-brokers, FMOs, agencies out there. Very, very, very impactful. Here it is 6 months later. And of course, not to kind of piss and moan and, oh, woe is me, but like, where was my compensation? I didn't, we had some shitty systems. Oh, sorry, I'm cursing a lot on this episode today. We had all these systems in place.
Dan's getting fired up today.
That were established by, CMS and the carriers, and that was the way, and they're all broken. And so, oh, too bad, so sad.
Well, the regular CMS didn't realize, and nobody, I think, had quite recognized how unified or conglomeratized, consolidated change had become, and it had become the way of aggregating all of these state Medicaids, because we talked about it when we talked about that episode, but basically each state Medicaid has their own systems, and some of them are more sophisticated than others, and there was no across-the-board universal aggregate to verify state eligibility with all these different systems. And so one of the things that emerged was MDON had basically consolidated and aggregated all of these, and their competitors
were like Laser and YPro, but they weren't as
but
robust.
they'd emerged as the winners, and it was a way for payers to verify, and for hospital administration and claims administrators to verify payer status and eligibility. And so it became the market standard of everybody was using it to verify eligibility, because the old days, which is the way we've been doing it for the past 6 months, of trying to get states to verify it or call over to Martha at the help desk, wasn't very efficient. And so that became the way. And then basically within 2 or 3 years, that was the industry standard where everybody was using it.
Or I had a state, not my backyard, but I even had a state that was sending over PHI non-compliantly to us. And I was like,
that's not how you're supposed to do it.
You're the state, and you're transmitting this info. It's not even HIPAA compliant. All right.
Let's just say there was some technological gaps, or that this Change felt, and then Change acquired MDON, and then United Health Group acquired Change, and then that hack happened, and it basically exposed how reliant the entire system was on this one, obviously not secure system.
Right.
And so it's taken a long time to rebuild it in a proper secure way. And United Health Group actually has a website that they have dedicated just to pretty consistent updates and things like that. But their main focus has been on provider verification and eligibility and claims payment and data, because that was the biggest, most across the board impact. And then it doesn't seem like all the full eligibility capabilities have been restored, and all the carriers have still kind of been going to their, sideways of verifying this eligibility. And we've kind of adapted and rolled with it a little bit, but it still has never quite returned to the
ease and ability to do that. And then also as I guess I would say a peripheral kind of, or another consequence of that is we've noticed that there's been a lot of conscientious kind of restriction on access to other systems and crackdowns as a result of this hack too. That has been so significant that now there's other platform systems, technologies out there that are having a hard time getting across the red tape.
That's one thing that we never talked about, but we probably should, is the great MARx apocalypse, the great MARx pullback of 2024. And, MARx has kind of been this little secret weapon in the industry for those who have had it for the past 4 or 5 years. And we've always had it for our agents, and specifically e-telebrokers and things like that. And, just to address it, Anthem had been sponsoring MARx access for a lot of e-telebrokers across the board, because they're doing a lot of, like we just described with the Change thing, a lot of verification of people across different populations and needing to access their CMS, their MARx profiles. I found it really interesting because we were here doing business in Utah, which is very vanilla for many, many years. And you had all these circumstances and life qualifying events and interesting Medicare profiles and type of plans that we never really dealt with until we started, really doing high volume nationally.
Yep.
And MARx became a pretty much essential when you're doing, business virtually with a lot of these consumers. And so we've always had it for a long time. And then us, just like everybody else, Anthem basically started pulling that back from everybody. And I believe, I don't have any knowledge on this other than this is just my hypothesis, is that MARx, Anthem looked at all the money they were paying for MARx for all these agents across the board. And as their funding got tight, just like everybody else across the board, their response to it was, we're going to pull this back and really eliminate this from basically everybody who's been getting sponsored access to this, because it's going to save them some money.
That, and I would also just hypothesize that it might have been more of a like there's got to be some exposure, or how many people have access to information to something like that. I would guess.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know for sure. If anybody knows for sure, I've heard MARx is anywhere between $1,000 and $1,200 a year per license. And I think they just started, like we do all the time with our tech stack and our users, and we start going down the list and we're like, we're paying for this person. Nah, cutting that off, right. Like we got to trim the P&L. And I think that's what Anthem basically had done. So not just us, but many agents and agencies across the board at this crucial time where change was still not working, functioning properly. At least you could verify like the Medicare side and LIS and all that everybody pretty much was losing access to that. Meanwhile, there are a couple carriers who came out as their response and said, hey, we're going to let some people have access to this if you qualify.
Right.
And then those people all got inundated, and now we're at a logjam again, and we're at again this.
But to summarize, we're entering into the peak selling season of the year, and we still don't really have full access for verifications and eligibility checks through Change Health still. And we still don't really have really solidified access to MARx for a lot of shops out there. So it just makes the task so much more challenging ahead of us, this AEP.
Yeah, one of the things that's always fascinated me, especially with like MARx, is you would think that you would want agents to know the most up-to-date, accurate information about that Medicare beneficiary, that it wouldn't just be a little bit of a...
Well, think about how different it is on the ACA side, when you can like log in and see their applications and prior applications and everything else. We're still talking about health insurance and subsidies and funding going, but you're talking people over 65 and people under 65 are on the marketplace. And it is actually the opposite when you're looking at the ACA, when you're like, oh, let me just type in your name, your address, and your date of birth, and let me pull up all this information and see it there. I mean, that's...
And prior to last year, and I'll be your agent, That's
exactly prior to last year, you mean like a few months ago?
Yeah. Yoink. And I'm your agent.
I don't know.
Now.
Should I use that as a transition to talk about that?
Let's address one more thing, and then we'll transition to ACA. And we've got Jeff here, who's been pretty much quiet. We've been talking over him, but we wanted to talk about the non-competes. We did a whole podcast episode where we talked about the FTC banning non-competes, and that was struck down earlier this year. Of course, we talked a lot about it, but the Chevron doctrine was kind of overturned, and a lot of like overly aggressive regulatory unilateral decisions had kind of been challenged, and that kind of dropped. I'll admit I was a little bit hoping kind of would stick, just because I was hoping it would fix the release process in our industry. Right. I think the release process is still something that's really broken, and we're definitely victimized by that process, how we operate. But that is no longer on the table. Is the FTC did not ban non-competes.
Well, they attempted to, but it was overturned.
Correct.
Yes. So, and the reason that we brought it up on this show in particular was because when they really talked about, hey, it hit the media that the FTC bans non-competes, some of the most impacted industries was, of course, healthcare, insurance, and financials, and tech, right? Mm-hmm. And those were the big segments that were likely going to be the most impacted by the non-competes. And we're like straddling all of those, really, you know what I mean, with our business. So it was definitely on our radar, but it's nice to know, like, hey, at least, like anything, at least you want to know the rules of the game that you're playing. So at least now we know the environment, so it gives us a lot of definition, and we can plan accordingly. So that's at least good, and we wanted to kind of give that quick update, from a previous episode.
Yeah, so let's officially now segue into kind of some of the ACA updates, and that's why we have our expert.
I think there are significant ACA updates. We were joking about it, and it's not a joking matter because it's so freaking serious. And again, I talk about all these fraudulent bullcrap things in ways that have impacted our business, and actually I can demonstrate to people millions of dollars that we lose from things, whether it's the Change Health, hacks and the fraud that's been happening in the ACA. And it's not like small, it's millions. And, we're talking about leads a minute ago, and you were telling me before people were buying, what kind of leads were they?
So they would buy mortgage protection leads.
Yeah.
Because you could buy one and be like, Mike Hardle, you live at this address and this is your date of birth. Well, I can look you up on the exchange and be your health insurance agent.
So they'd buy a cheap mortgage protection lead, then just go into the database and see if there's an existing application for health insurance. And be like, I'll be damned. There's an application there. Yep, I'm your guy. Yep. And just click, and now you're the agent getting paid. And so that was kind of crap happening. So it sounds like there were some big ACA changes, which...
Why weren't we willing to be so dirty? I mean, geez, think about all these people that secretly built these massive businesses. Hey, I'm just joking because it always comes to light, right?
Yeah, but I heard of one or two people who have lawsuits right now, but at the same time, they're still operating and they're still cashing checks. And I have carriers that are still giving them contracts and throwing them money, and they're still pumping out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of enrollments.
Well, we know lots of people who did that we could whistleblow on for sure, but it's like,
and guess what? They're still doing business, cashing those checks.
Yeah, I want to sleep at night. My integrity and the ability to not have to look over my shoulder for the rest of my life and wonder if I'm going to get rated.
I agree, but I'm just kind of like, there's karma, it'll catch up to you and everything else, but how long? Because it's not like a secret. Like there's entities out there who have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, red-handed, and everybody knows it, and it's like,
slap on the wrist.
Oh, hey, just don't do that anymore. Do it the right way.
Well, there were some gaps in our system, so you got us. You got us good. You took advantage really well.
You remind me of Super Troopers. You got me good. Yeah. Super Troopers. On Farva.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but I wish it's I always thought there were significant penalties and things that happened, but for them there. Anyways, the other thing we want to talk about is it sounds like the two-factor authentication texting is finally back online.
Yeah, Monday we were doing an application. We're like, wow, it's there right before our kickoff event. We had to change our whole slide deck and everything that we were presenting for people. But on Health Sherpa, it was back. The other change that they made.
And all EDEs, right?
Mm-hmm, all EDEs, it was back on. And then the other big change was you now have to have a social security number in order to complete the application. Beforehand, where you had those mortgage protection leads where they were just going through, they had no idea what their social was. They might have even been changing them plans in a lot of the cases. Now you have to have the social security number in order to complete the application. Unless it's a newborn child, they will let that still go through. If you don't have the social security number, you still have to do the 3-way call into CMS with the marketplace on it to get the application changed if you're not the agent of record.
Yeah, so as of September 19th, that's currently back to how it is.
But just so people understand, the reason we're talking about it is there was no announcement to the industry or the market. I haven't been able to see on a Newswire, a CMS communication, a Health Sherpa communication, nothing. I've seen nothing other than I'm like, well, I'll be damned. This works again.
Yeah, it's the Michael Scott snip, snap, make up your mind. It's back and forth.
Well, and for us, it's just so we were talking about how hard it is to run ACA and have people on staff and payroll and be able to run these, a business this way, and your processes constantly change. And there's, just kidding. And, obviously, it's great. We're happy that the two-factor texting is back on board, but we went 45 days without it. Yeah. And so now, it's back on board. The lack of communication and the lack of knowing is what makes it really, really difficult. We made decisions even as a business. Had we known that it was hey guys, this is only going to be a temporary blip for 30 to 60 days, we probably would have made some of the decisions we did. Right. But, we had to. So, because there was no certainty about when that functionality was going to come back online. Yeah. But hey, surprise, it's good news, it's back online. And I also wanted to recap what you talked about. It's mind-blowing for probably many of you listening that up until now, you have not had to have somebody's social security number in order to do an application for health insurance, even though they're getting federal subsidies and tax returns and everything else, but you didn't have to have a social.
Yeah, you could get the application submitted, and then they would ask for follow-up documents. Sometimes. That's the big thing. It's sometimes. It used to be always.
But isn't it mind-blowing to kind of know, well, wouldn't that have been like a day one thing? Like from the first day that you would require that on an application?
And you get it sometimes like, okay, I know my wife's social. Oh, crap, I don't know this child's social security number. Okay, well, we can get the application turned in, and we'll get that back on follow-up. It's good that they're making these changes so now people can't just go by 100,000 names and just go through them really quick. Just have all these people typing in names, taking on applications. I'm sure we fell tens of thousands of apps to that exact same fraud, and that's just one portion of the fraud that these people were doing.
Yeah. So let's talk about maybe some of the other rumors or changes we know are going to happen for ACA OE. One thing I want to clarify for everybody. ACA refers to their annual enrollment season as OE, open enrollment.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. On Medicare, it's AEP, annual enrollment period.
Annual election period.
Annual election period.
Come on, man. Get it right.
I'm thinking about, then I'm clarifying that
now,
starting in January, there's also OEP
for Medicare.
open enrollment period for Medicare as well. So it gets very confusing. But
understand, brokers and agents call it AEP because that's the correct term. Consumers who are 65 are going, oh yeah, it's my open enrollment period.
Yep.
So it causes more confusion, right?
Correct. Just like anything in this industry.
It's clear as mud.
Yep, clear as mud.
And the dates, you got October 15th through December 7th, it's AEP.
I love all the acronyms, like the new M3P that everyone's talking about with the PDP smoothing. It's like the Medicare monthly prescription payment plan. I'm like, just call it that because that describes no one's going to know what the hell M3P is. Stop calling it that.
Well, and then you have the pre-enrollment period, like that pre-period from October 1st to October 15th.
Yep.
That's the pre-period. So
know your stuff. That's what I want to say.
Exactly.
And with that, Jeff,
hey,
what rumors are we hearing?
if you don't know your stuff, I happen to know a very knowledgeable FMO who can teach you those things.
For sure.
Yeah.
So November 1st through December 15th for OEP for ACA, that will give you a January 1st effective date. Anything after December 15th through January 15th will give you a February 1st effective date. So it's a little bit different than Medicare. If you're right in between October 15th to December 7th, it's a January 1, just because it's expanded and it goes a little bit later into the season. That's why we're doing our kickoff event if any of you guys want to join online on October 29th, because a lot of the carriers for ACA won't have their information out until October. So this year we switched it up. We didn't do back-to-back days. We separated Medicare and ACA.
Yep.
And we're expecting a really good lineup on October 29th.
Yeah, they call that window shopping, like that week before, because we really don't know where things are going to land as far as premiums, deductibles, basically those benefits on the marketplace plans. Yeah. And so you find out just like literally days before. And so you kind of have an inkling of, areas that they're going to be expanding. You kind of know stable markets and where you are guessing that things are going to be very competitive, but you don't have like a really clear picture. And so that's the one thing that makes it really hard from like a business marketing perspective when you're like a national firm on the ACA side. We get some hints and some help from carriers on like where to go, but it still is like just stabbing in the dark a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I will say we should talk about, while we're on the topic of ACA too, we've already started to get some preliminary information from some carriers out there in multiple states. And again, the information's not going to be out to the public until probably the last week of October.
Yes,
I'm guessing.
United Healthcare, they issued theirs last week, so we can talk about that.
Okay.
UHC is going into Wyoming, and they're going full state coverage in Nebraska. Wyoming's practically state coverage because, there's only so many people that live in Wyoming. Yeah. They're missing 3 counties out of the
They
whole
missed
state.
13 people.
Yep, they missed 13 people, but it's exciting news for people in Wyoming because, you haven't had a big national player come in that's got good network, good doctors, everything across the board. We're anticipating our agents to write a ton of business in Wyoming.
Yep.
Nebraska, full state coverage, big expansion for United Healthcare. We're expecting United Healthcare to have really good numbers this year. They're also expanding to a lot of counties and states that they're already in. Aetna, they're not doing any state expansion this year, but they are adding in more counties. Plans, are looking pretty good with them as well. But I think one of the big things across the board is you're going to see a premium increase coming into next year.
And I do also know that we can talk about probably Elevance too, and they're having. They have another brand like a Wellaby product, that's going to be expanding into a couple of states. I don't know if I want to like completely give.
And that's Anthem in case anyone's wondering online.
I'll limit. We have a lot more information, but
they made it announced. It is going to Texas, Florida, and Maryland.
Yep.
They're still working out some stuff. The product isn't available until OEP when it starts. But they're pretty fired up, and that's 3 really big state expansions that they're doing.
It is. So there's going to be some states doing that. We have a few other carriers that are kind of removing products in areas that weren't as profitable, and then kind of doubling down in other areas as well. But I will say, to your point, across the board though, we're seeing pretty significant premium increases. Pretty significant. Like some counties, 7-9%, which is on the low end.
Yeah.
We've seen some areas where they're getting an 18% or more increase from a lot of these plans. Yeah. So the premiums are, an 18% increase is pretty steep, and there's probably parts of the country when we get the full picture are going to be even higher. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some carriers who are as high as 30% rate increases in some areas. So premiums are going to go up a lot. Just so everybody knows, plan on it. It's happening. Big increases. And the other thing that's going to happen is right now there's those enhanced subsidies. Mm-hmm. So the amount of dollars, let's just say if you're not selling ACA plans, let's just pretend that a plan is they have metal tiers like bronze, silver, gold, platinum.
Yep.
So they have different categorizations, and just like it is, the higher the tier, the better the coverage. And, obviously the higher premium depending on the plan. Let's just pretend you had an $800 a month silver plan. Well, now that premium increases, significantly, and the government has been providing subsidies off of what would be the normal price.
Right.
And those subsidies have been enhanced with additional funding. That ends at the end of calendar year 2025.
Yep.
So this is the last year to have those subsidies on those plans. It will certainly be a point of contention to come back to the negotiating table to re-extend those subsidies next year. I won't say why, but just, next year that will be a big negotiation point between the two parties.
Oh, it's going to be major. We will say, with Agent Boost, we anticipate no matter what happens that we do think it will be extended. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we've gotten back from the carrier partners that we've talked to. But still, anything's up in the air, so we really got to be diligent on what plans and stuff you're putting people on for open enrollment and putting them with good, credible companies. So I think that's another major point that we're putting out to our agents this year.
We keep saying that. That was another theme of our conference too. I know I've been like we've been like all over the place on this episode.
I know. I'm looking at all the stuff we were supposed to cover. I'm like, we didn't cover half of it.
That's what I said. We had enough to do 4 episodes. Yeah. But that was another theme that we kind of talked about in the conference is sticking with the carriers who value you as an agent and the FMOs who are in the ecosystem, who are in the supply chain, who really are reputable and who are good and stable. Because when things get tough and things get difficult, that's where you got to lean in with those partnerships and with those carriers. And that was another one of our themes, right? So it's the same way in the ACA. There's been some carriers that have been unstable, that have been kind of dropping off over these last couple of years, and when the economics and the environment become more difficult, that's not the time to be like, oh, there's this new product and this new company or something, seems like a good idea, let's roll the dice. That's not the moment to do that as a broker.
One of the conversations I had with one of our agency owners, about this, let's call them an ankle biter carrier nationally, but they think they're they've got delusions of grandeur.
In those 5 counties, they're amazing. Yeah, or whatever.
In this low populated state, they are great. But I said, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a massive block of business with this carrier X or this carrier 5 years from now? Who do you trust that carrier is going to be around and those policies are going to be on the books? And he said, well, this one that's been in the game for many, many years. And I said, well, then. Why don't you let your habits dictate that? You're going to be taking care of your beneficiaries too. None of the consumers want to have to change their plans every year. It's so annoying to have to chase benefits for they've got a $20 cheaper co-payment on this. I'm going to change my entire insurance plan just for that.
Well, like think about financial products too. And you can talk about this. Look at your AM Best ratings, right? Like it's weird that you're talking about buying insurance for something, and if you go into life insurance and financial products or annuities or anything else, you have products that are backed by Lloyd's of London or that have AM Best ratings. They're reinsured and they have a rating too. And you have anywhere from, what does it go from AM Best, A++, like triple plus to plus. What's the garbage at the end?
You can go all the way down to F.
Right. Okay. So, but again, when you're a financial person pitching
somebody
products,
in the industry who's an F.
Is there an F minus?
I don't think I've seen that. I've seen one.
Yeah. It's like, hey, can we get the, I won't go into that, but how often do you go to consumers and be like, you know what, this life insurance company, they're only a C minus, looks really great. Their premiums are good. I think this is what you should do with your 30-year term policy on this C minus rated insurance company. How often does that happen?
All the time. I just pulled one from our book of business because they lost an A rating. They're no longer available as a product for us because we're not going to be responsible for that. If you can't maintain even an A minus rating, it's like, come on now.
So, but the point is, a lot of financial advisors and people, that's a consideration when they're going to present to a client and say, hey, the reason that I am, recommending this annuity with this particular company or this life insurance product is because of the person holding the paper behind it, and their rating and their stability.
Been around 100 years
and that's why. And I think that same concept needs to kind of hit home and register with a lot of these agents on the Medicare side and the ACA side. At the end of the day, it's insurance, and you want that to be with like an A-rated company.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to add on was, it's one of the things that I'm excited about what's going on in the industry right now is you had these past, with the Goldilocks era of these Medicare Advantage and these ACA plans, there's been a little bit of commoditization of benefits, right? Where it's almost been a race to the bottom. And especially when you've had a lot of these, the big e-telebrokers that were involved in the equation very heavily, one of the main sales tactics there was like, well, I can get you $50 more of dental, or I can get you an OTC card. Let's switch your entire insurance plan so you might be able to get $40 more worth of aspirin a year, And it's like those really developed and proliferated a lot of bad sales practices. And I think that what we're going to see is, like you just said, let's sell the carriers and the plans that are good and reputable and that are providing a really good experience for the consumers. The base level carriers, right? That they're going to pay your claims, they're going to have better than average customer service, the doctors are going to like working with that plan, and you're not going to show the office lady that insurance card and they're like, oh great, like got to deal with these people, But
you're taking some shots on some people today.
I didn't name any names. Very, very.
We all know who you're talking about, though.
Very, very generic. We could name names, but I think that there's going to be a big pendulum swing back to what we were talking about on the ACA side and the Medicare side, where it's like, well, look, who's going to provide you good quality service, right? You don't need to make your plan decision based on, well, who's going to give me $1,500 worth of dental reimbursement, or who's going to give me $1,800 worth of dental reimbursement. You can decide on how that company operates and your experience and how they're going to operate as an insurer, not as a who gives me the biggest Papa Pet robot.
And again, going back to, I think we'll wrap this up, but going back to being valuable as a broker, those are the things that you need to know, and that's your value you're bringing into the transaction and into the equation to be able to say, hey, listen, I've dealt with so many clients and I have all these years of experience, and this has been my experience, and this is why, you're going to want this particular company, because there's things, if you pull back, look under the hood, or you peel back a few layers, things are not equal, and my clients that have been on this plan, this is what I've experienced. And accessing that benefit, or having the network to use the benefit, or when you call in to have an actual issue, how that actually functions and works is very, very, very different from this company to that company. Here's that experience and knowledge is what they can't see when they just look up on an SOB online and look at numbers and compare.
Correct.
So,
yep.
Be valuable. So
yeah, well, we got a lot. We can we can record another one.
Hey, we have enough content for another 2 episodes. Maybe we'll just grind it out, right, Matt?
Hey, well, we would, but I kind of want to give a shout out as we wrap up to Matt Criscelli. He's been our content creator for the past. It's been 6 months, Matt, and he got an opportunity. He's moving to Austin, Texas. So 2 things. Thank you, Matt, for all you've done. I think people have noticed an increase in quality, and we've experienced a lot of growth in the professionalism and the impact that this podcast has had over the industry while you've been here helping us. So thank you. Good luck to your future. And also, if anybody out there wants to, be a content creator, we're looking. So Agent Boost
Fly
is looking.
online.
No, but and I would echo that too. I was just telling Matt before this, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna miss you, seeing you around this place. So he's been very impactful, been part of our crew, and felt part of the team for the last 6 months. And again, we just wanted to kind of thank him and appreciate his efforts. So
we'll wrap with that. Thanks, buddy.